Fiona Carrington had a reputation, but she never spoke from the heart. Over the years, I've worked as his crisis PR manager, dealing with a lot of messes. That was until his first love came back to town. Dexter, who usually acted aloof and composed, finally showed some vulnerability in front of the media. Holding her hand, he admitted, "Vivian is the only woman I've ever truly believed in." I stood in front of the screen, chills running down my spine. I immediately submitted my resignation and agreed to the arranged marriage back home. But Dexter chased after me and grabbed my arm. "Fiona, the agreement isn't up yet. This is a one-sided breach." It was the day Dexter brought his first love back to the country. I was at the office handling the photos he took with that young model a few days ago. In the photo, the young, delicate girl is clinging to his waist, acting sweet. He has a cigarette in his mouth and doesn't show much emotion. Still, he allows the little model's red lips to come close to him. I push down the dull pain in my heart. Dexter has hated me for all these years. Sometimes a call comes in the middle of the night, and I have to deal with all kinds of rumors for him. "Fiona, isn't that what you do? What's with the complaining?" I took a deep breath and handed the proposal I'd just finished to Evelyn. In the break room, a group of people was whispering, "Is Dexter really serious this time?" "I think so too. When has Dexter ever admitted to any of his rumored girlfriends? I heard this one is from his first love. So has Fiona spent all these years making a wedding dress for someone else?" I looked down at my finger, cut by the cup, feeling speechless. This cup was a birthday gift Dexter gave me a long time ago. It cracked open without any warning, just like the relationship I've had with him for all these years. When they saw me hurt, someone gasped. I lowered my eyes to the flat screen in front of me. Dexter was holding a woman. In that instant, my mind instinctively started coming up with a plan. I just took out my phone, ready to have someone trend it. That's when I saw Dexter, who usually stays so composed, actually tear up in front of the media for the first time. He held her hand and said that Vivian is the only woman he ever acknowledges. Standing in front of the screen, I felt a chill all over. If she is the only woman for Dexter, then what does that make me? Vivian, it's been a while since I've heard that name. I found myself momentarily dazed. Thinking about Dexter's recent strange behavior, everything started to make sense. Evelyn stepped forward cautiously and asked me, "Sister Fiona, do we still need to contact the media?" I shook my head and said, "No, it's not necessary. From now on, it's no longer needed." Vivian was Dexter's first love when he was just starting to feel those emotions. It was a first love torn apart by family interference. It represents the regrets of youth spent chasing fleeting romances over the years. I'll always remember how Dexter fought against his family for that relationship. Landon, who's usually so full of himself, actually came to me, asking for a favor just to see her. I stayed at the office until it was dark. A mutual friend called and invited me to Vivian's welcome party. I guess I still had a bit of hope deep down. After touching up my makeup, I drove to the venue. As I pushed the door open, I saw Dexter shielding Vivian from some drinks. Their gazes were soft and filled with an unspoken tenderness. When he noticed me, the smile on his face froze for a moment. A friend urged me to take a seat. "Fiona knows Vivian, right? You grew up alongside Dexter, so today you really need to make sure they drink up." If it weren't for the trending news, we wouldn't have even known that these two had patched things up. "And Fiona, you really live up to your title as Dexter's crisis management expert. You sure know how to keep a secret." Reuniting a broken bond, what a beautiful phrase. If I weren't Fiona. After waiting for a while with no response from me, someone clueless spoke up, thinking Fiona had been by Dexter's side all these years, and they would end up together. One comment left the whole place in silence. Vivian's eyes immediately turned red, and she turned her head away, pouting in grievance. I looked at Dexter. He just shot me a warning glance. He pulled the woman close and softly comforted her. I felt utterly defeated. The glimmer of hope I had was completely crushed. Struggling to swallow the dryness in my throat, I raised my glass with trembling hands. I've always seen Dexter as a brother, and now that his wife is back, let's toast to this couple finally being together. Tears flowed as I downed my drink. The mood picked up again. Vivian, blushing, slid into Dexter's arms. I turned my head to avoid Dexter's gaze. It felt like something was choking my heart, and I couldn't breathe through my nose. When I was little, my dad died in a car accident, and soon after that, my mom remarried. She left me alone to stay with the Hawthorne family. They took pity on me, so they decided to keep me around as the driver's daughter. But that wasn't really my home. I felt like I was walking on eggshells with the Hawthorne family, terrified that even the smallest mistake would get me kicked out and lose my last place to stay. Dexter, 2 years older than me, was so mature he seemed like a little adult. He chased off anyone who bullied me and made a big deal about how Fiona was now Dexter's little sidekick. I just wanted to survive. Feeling grateful for this wonderful big brother, I followed Dexter around all day. At first, he paid me some attention, but over time he grew tired of it. One time, Dexter purposely left me behind and went home without me. Then I got cornered in an alley by a group of punks. When he came over, I was being shoved to the ground. Dexter chased them off and looked at me, shaking his head in disappointment. Doesn't he understand the simple idea of running away when you can't fight back? I looked down, sniffling as I replied that they took my backpack, which had the pen you gave me in it, and all the homework the teacher assigned for tonight that I haven't done yet. Dexter's words made me laugh in disbelief. After that, he allowed me to follow him around. Years went by like this, so long that I even forgot when I started liking Dexter. Then one day, I saw him come back from college with his new girlfriend and introduce her to me. That was the first time I met Vivian. In that moment, my insecurities came flooding back. He asked me to keep it a secret from home for a while, but later, when it all blew up, he was the first to suspect that I spilled the beans. It seems like he conveniently forgot how loudly he was parading his relationship around school. There's no way Oliver wouldn't have found out. Later on, Dexter was forced to break up. On the day Vivian left the country, he asked me to take him to see her. I remembered Oliver's warning and had to refuse. He then blamed me for everything. So, when he suggested a marriage of convenience, I didn't say no. Just as he wanted, we kept it a secret for 3 years. There are still 6 months until it expires. But I'm so tired of it. As I came out of the bathroom, I heard a voice around the corner. Vivian was crying and asking, "Dexter, I don't want to hear it. Just go. Go." I saw Dexter holding Vivian in his arms, comforting her. "But I love you. For all these years, I've only loved you, Vivian. My marriage to her is just a contract, and it'll be over in 6 months. As soon as that time is up, I'll marry you. But I don't want to be the other woman." Dexter's voice became softer, almost playful. "Silly girl, how could I ever let you go? No one knows I'm married to her. You've always been the one I wanted to marry." I listened to the two of them bare their souls while the mirror reflected my pale, uncomfortable face. Over the years, I've ended up being a bit of a joke. After the event, I had too much to drink to drive. A group of people called a driver from my place. Dexter helped Vivian into the car. As the window rolled down, he looked at me, and for once, there was a hint of kindness in his eyes. In a daze, I thought I saw the old Dexter, but the cold words snapped me back to reality. Vivian was feeling sick from drinking too much, so I had to take her and leave. "You can take a cab, just be careful." Without waiting for my response, the car shot off like an arrow. I found myself forced to inhale exhaust fumes, kneeling by the roadside, almost about to throw up bile. Several men closed in, sizing me up with some bad intentions. "Hey, pretty girl, not feeling well? Is Landon taking you home?" I managed to squeeze out one word, "leave," but that only made him angrier as he lunged to grab my arm. I dodged and ran back, hearing the cursing behind me. It was like I was back in that old alley again. Plus, the alcohol made me tremble like crazy. I tucked myself into a corner, pulled out my phone from my bag, and called the number saved Ash's band. "Dexter, someone's following me. Please come quickly. Just this once, I'm begging you." The voice on the other end immediately turned tense. "Fiona, where are you? Speak up." Just as I was about to respond, a soft, pained voice came through the phone. "Dexter, I'm feeling really terrible. Please help me." My hand gripping the phone grew colder by the second. When Dexter spoke again, his voice was hoarse. "I've got things to do. Find someone else." As I watched the call disconnect, I let out a self-deprecating laugh. The man approached, and I felt anger bubbling up as I looked at his lewd face. I took off my high heels and threw them at him one after another. Then, I grabbed a brick nearby and started hitting him with it. I only stopped when I could still hear them breathe. The moment I stepped out of the alley, my hair was a mess and I was both crying and laughing. Dexter hadn't come home all night. I opened my phone and agreed to Margaret's insistence that I return home for a matchmaking session. The next day, I went to the office to resign. The HR department looked at me awkwardly. "Fiona, your resignation needs Dexter's approval, and I can't approve it from my end." I took a deep breath and decided not to put her in a tough spot. I turned and headed to the president's office. Maybe it was the happy occasion, but Dexter had a smile dancing in his eyes. Even when he saw me walk in, he didn't taunt me like he usually did. It wasn't until I handed him my resignation letter that his expression changed. He leaned in slightly, lifted my chin, and gently caressed my skin with his fingertips. His voice was calm but carried a hint of mockery. Who was he trying to impress with that look? Fiona, didn't you go through so much trouble to push Vivian away just to stay by my side? What's going on that you can't handle it? I know him too well, I can tell he's not happy. Looking at the hickey on his neck, I intentionally poked at him. Dexter can't be reluctant to let me go, can he? What? Are you serious? You actually fell for me? Dexter squinted at me, then after a moment, moved his hand away. He took the resignation letter, signed it quickly, and tossed it to me. Fiona, who do you think you are? Take your resignation letter and get as far away as you can. I hope I never see you again. Fine. I wiped my tears away and nodded as I walked out. Behind me, I heard a loud crash, but I didn't look back even once. I went straight to the train station. As soon as I got on the next train home, I took out my SIM card and snapped it in half. I tossed my old phone into the trash can. Trash belongs in the trash. I've gotten tired of living carefully with the Hawthorne family over the years. I don't want to deal with anyone else's moods anymore. So, I decided to use my savings to open a bed and breakfast back home. The people I knew before weren't very reliable, and Margaret has also lost interest lately. I put some freshly picked grapes into a basket, and when I turned around, I almost tripped and fell. A big hand rested on me, and I felt warmth on my waist. I took a step back, and the person immediately let go. Are you okay? I shook my head. The man smiled and nodded. Are you heading to a casual Airbnb? You too? He nodded, his gaze dropping to mine with a hint of a smile. I was a bit confused by him, took a moment to think, and confirmed that I didn't know this level of handsome. I picked up the basket and signaled for him to follow. I selected a few good-looking grapes and handed them over. Seeing his confusion, I quickly spoke up. How about this as a welcome gift for saving me earlier? This is all homegrown, definitely organic and chemical-free. The man smiled and said thank you as he took it and popped it in his mouth. Hey, you didn't peel it, I said. He looked at me and grinned mischievously. Nothing dirty, nothing sick. I laughed along. We chatted casually on the way, and maybe we hit it off so well that I completely forgot to ask his name. Landon. Huh? Seeing me frozen in place, he leaned in closer. No way, Fiona. You really don't recognize me? A chubby figure popped into my mind uncontrollably. I rubbed my eyes. I accidentally said out loud what I was thinking. Did you get plastic surgery? Landon reached out and pinched my cheek, his tone a bit gritted. Have another good look, will you? I begged for mercy, saying I just didn't have the eye for it, and that Landon, the handsome guy, was just naturally good looking and that guys get better looking as they age. He laughed at my words and ruffled my hair. Fiona, after all these years, how are you still so cheeky? This is my high school classmate who confessed to me but got rejected. In a huff, he left the country and hasn't come back for years. When Dexter called, I was cooking. Landon pretended I didn't recognize him and insisted I had to make him a big dinner to make it up to him. I answered the phone, but no one spoke for a while. Just as I was about to hang up, a rough voice came through, asking, "Did you block all of us? Had enough of the fuss?" At that moment, Landon walked over and asked me what I was doing. The phone was suddenly hung up. The man in front of me still had steam rising from his skin, and the look in his eyes was pitiful. Did I say something wrong? I shook my head and blocked the number I just called. A group of friends looked at the guy who just threw his phone, and the lively atmosphere quieted down a bit. Dexter had a dark look on his face as he smashed his drink onto the glass table. He irritably unbuttoned his shirt with one hand, revealing a hint of rage. Someone nearby, not afraid of the tension, asked, "Is this because of Fiona? I heard that after you quit, you went back home and opened a bed and breakfast. A lot of people are flocking there because of the pretty lady boss. I just don't get you. You finally got Vivian back after so long, and now you're not even trying to make it work? Fiona has been following you around for years, and you never treated her right. Now that she's moved on, what's your problem? Seriously, man, this is just messed up." Dexter's face got even darker. A few friends couldn't stand it anymore and dragged him to the bed and breakfast that night. I just happened to catch Landon picking a bug out of my hair. From a distance, it looked a lot like they were kissing. "Fiona, what the hell are you doing?" I looked up and saw Dexter standing at the door of the rental, looking really grim. Landon noticed my expression and followed my gaze. Without a word, he stepped forward and positioned himself behind me. My friend tried to break the awkwardness with a laugh, saying, "Fiona, long time no see. We're just here on vacation. You wouldn't turn us away, would you?" It was a pretty obvious excuse. But hey, who wouldn't want to make some money? I glanced at Landon, and he gave me a reassuring look. After handing the key card to the group, I headed toward the room. But as I turned the corner, a hand wrapped around me. Dexter was gripping the back of my neck, his eyes filled with a mix of mockery and coldness that wasn't quite a smile. "Found a new target so quickly?" I frowned, as his expression usually meant he was about to lose his temper. "Well, your taste isn't that great either. After all these years by my side, shouldn't you have a bit of standards? You can't just settle for any random person, otherwise, aren't you just slapping me in the face?" I'm suddenly finding this pretty funny. Dexter is as arrogant as ever. Even if he doesn't like me, he still sees me as his possession. I didn't want to hear him go on anymore, so I struggled to leave. "Fiona, where are you going to go? To some run-of-the-mill little BB? If people find out, they'll think the Hawthorne family can't afford to take care of you." His words hit me hard, filling me with some anger deep down. When has the Hawthorne family ever acknowledged me? I slowed my breathing, trying to get my emotions in check. "Dexter, can't you just let me go now that the person you've been waiting for is back?" He grabbed my chin with one hand and leaned down to kiss me. I turned my head away and sobbed, but he just pushed down harder. After a long while, he finally let me go. I couldn't hold it in any longer and just threw up. The thought of him kissing so many women made me feel nauseous. Dexter's face turned cold when he saw that. His voice came out like it was squeezed through his back teeth. "Fiona, don't forget, you're still my wife. We're still a legal couple." I wiped the filth from the corner of my mouth. "So what? Should I remind you that what you did before is called cheating?" Dexter's face changed, and he looked over with dark, heavy eyes. "Fiona, remember who you are." I clenched my fist, pushing down the bitterness inside. I slapped Dexter across the face. "What identity do I have, Dexter? You tell me." He grabbed me, saying, "Fiona, the agreement isn't up yet. This is called a breach of contract." The next morning, I woke up to a lot of noise outside. I opened the door and saw a big crowd in the yard. Vivian was wearing high heels and just tossed her suitcase aside. She ran into Dexter's arms and said, "Dexter, why didn't you bring me along when you came to play?" Dexter instinctively held her close, one hand on her back, softly patting her. I watched the scene unfold, my fingers clenched tightly, turning white from the pressure. It turns out the heart can still ache. Yet my expression was disturbingly calm, almost numb. I locked eyes with Vivian through the crowd, her gaze challenging mine. Suddenly, a hand covered my eyes. "If you don't want to see, then don't look." The warmth of the dry palm nearly brought me to tears. How could I just let go of someone I've loved for so many years? Vivian jumped off Dexter suddenly and ran over to grab my hand. "Fiona, is this your boyfriend?" I was annoyed. Vivian was acting so friendly, like we were super close or something. I shook her off. "What's it to you?" Dexter strode forward, anger in his eyes, and shouted at me, "Fiona, what are you doing? Is this what the Hawthorne family has taught you after all these years, such terrible manners?" I glanced at the guests in the yard, not wanting to ruin the good reputation of the place. I forced myself to hold back my anger. I lowered my voice and asked him, "So what are you all up to now? My little place can't afford big shots like you." Dexter looked at me for a moment and then burst out laughing. "Fiona, Are you jealous or something? Landon stood by, scoffing, wondering who would be jealous of a second-hand guy. He casually wrapped his arm around me and grinned, saying, "Come on, let's get you something good to eat. Just be careful not to catch any bad vibes this early in the morning." Dexter, seeing how close I was to Landon, couldn't resist making a jab. Landon just got back, so he probably doesn't know some people's true colors. Be careful, or you might find it hard to shake them off. Landon pretended to think for a moment, glancing at Vivian, then shook his head in disdain. After getting used to Fiona, a stunning beauty, how could Dexter even look at this plain little tea drinker? Is this the power of first love? But honestly, this guy's so careless with himself, like a rotten cabbage. All these years, I've been keeping myself for my girl Fiona. What about you, Dexter? Everyone knows about your dating history. Ha! I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I silently gave Landon a thumbs up for his fighting spirit. After talking for so long, I was starting to feel a bit hungry. Dexter's gaze landed on my hand pulling at Landon's sleeve, and he coldly said, "Fiona, don't forget our agreement." When I didn't respond, Dexter tried to pull me again, but Vivian grabbed him. I could hear her whiny voice behind me. The dining table was filled with dishes that Landon had prepared himself. Looking at him, who's helped me so many times, I felt a bit embarrassed. "I just gave you more trouble again." He smiled as he served me food. "I didn't know what you liked, so I made everything I could think of." I looked at the table full of dishes, feeling a stir inside. From the next table, I heard Vivian complaining, questioning why her table had so much good food while ours only had buns and soy milk. "I don't care. You all need to treat us equally, or I will complain." Some guests who couldn't stand it spoke up for me, saying, "Seriously, you're an adult. Can't you read the room? Clearly, that's food Fiona's boyfriend made for her. If you want some, have your boyfriend make it for you. The breakfast at this inn is fixed. If you don't want to eat, then don't. The rest of us are waiting to eat." Vivian awkwardly glanced at Dexter, only to find him staring at me. Dexter snapped back to reality, his expression showing a hint of annoyance. "All right. What does it matter what to eat? I don't know who spread the word, but a bunch of handsome guys have appeared at my guest house." It attracted quite a few guests. I've been so busy that I barely have time to run into that crowd. I just got back from fishing at the lake when I saw Dexter blocking the door, looking like he was about to confront me. "What exactly is your relationship with Landon?" I rolled my eyes, too tired to answer such a pointless question. "Just thinking about your behavior makes you look like that guy who chases after his ex after a breakup. Too bad I'm not the soft-hearted heroine and I'm not interested in playing those games with you." Dexter's eyes were sharp, trying to pick up on something else from me. "You're overthinking it. I'm just curious about how that little sidekick who used to cling to me is suddenly so different. Or is this just your new trick? I admit you've caught my attention this time, but don't push it too far." "Play?" I looked up at him, challenging him. "Who's playing with you? Landon is my boyfriend, and he's got the energy, no doubt about that." Dexter gave me a fake smile as he looked behind me. "Really?" My heart raced, and as I turned to meet Landon's gaze, I felt my whole body heat up. I was just about to make a run for it when I got pulled into a mint-scented embrace. A playful voice rang from above, saying, "Yeah, you can't compare to Dexter, who's still going strong. You better take it easy." Dexter's face was visibly dark with anger. The words that followed cut even deeper. "Landon, did you know your girlfriend is married? Want me to tell Landon's parents that their son is trying to be someone else's side guy?" A wave of humiliation washed over me, and I felt like all the blood had drained from my face. Landon gently stroked my head. I didn't need to bother Dexter. I had already told my parents about Fiona before coming back home. Forget about being a mistress. If Fiona is open to it, being a lover is fine too. Besides, isn't it the unloved who are seen as mistresses? As Landon took me back to the room, Dexter stood there, lost in his thoughts. My forehead bumped against Landon's back. One of his hands was firmly gripping my side, and the heat radiating through the thin fabric felt like it was burning my skin. I took a step back, trying to break free from his embrace, but he just pulled me in tighter. "Ugh." I let out a soft grunt. The breathing above me got a bit heavier, and the voice sounded slightly husky. My girlfriend wouldn't be thinking about backing out, would she? I laughed it off, saying thanks for bailing me out earlier. "Really? When you turned away just now, Were you trying to sneak off? Landon leaned in a bit closer, whispering in my ear, and the minty scent grew stronger. I tucked in a bit and pushed him away with my hands. His skin felt a little tough, and I instinctively squeezed it. Are you hinting at something? Landon's voice had a hint of laughter, a sort of pleased sigh. Can you let me go first? I feel a bit helpless. What if you don't let go and he runs away again? I looked up at him with a fake smile and said, I promise. Landon loosened his grip just enough for me to slip out of his embrace easily. Landon, please don't do this. Like he said, I'm not divorced yet. Landon lightly tapped my forehead with his fingers. I knew. I looked at him in shock and asked, how did you know? He gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear and said, I didn't mean to eavesdrop that day. I didn't show up because I was worried it would make you uncomfortable. Can you give me a chance now? After that day, Dexter and his crew left. I watched the man in front of me, focused on fishing. Why aren't you leaving yet? Landon tilted his head, and the sunlight hit his striking features, momentarily making me lose my train of thought. Seeing this, he smiled even more happily. If I leave, what will you do when you find someone else? I lose my good girlfriend. Who am I supposed to cry to? Hearing my hesitation, Landon changed what he was about to say. My future girlfriend. I'm so fed up with him that I just can't even. I might as well let him be. After wasting over 10 years on Dexter, I've completely lost the energy for another relationship. It's just too exhausting. Plus, I don't want to take that gamble again. Agreeing to go back home to meet Margaret for a blind date was just an excuse. Nowadays, the bed and breakfast business is picking up, and all I want to do is run it well. A kid came up to me and said, Sister, Grandpa said he saved some strawberries for you, the biggest and freshest ones. It was Guagua, the granddaughter of the neighbor farmer. Guagua stared at Landon for a long time, as if she didn't know what to call him. Suddenly, the word brother-in-law slipped out of her mouth. I pressed my lips together, about to explain. Landon pulled me over, looking curiously at Guagua, thinking it was impressive how perceptive the kid was. Guagua laughed, saying both the sister and brother-in-law were good-looking. Landon let go of me and rummaged through his pocket for a while before pulling out a card. You have a real sweet tongue, so I'm giving it to you. You look just like the foolish rich kid. Guagua looked at me, not daring to take it. I tapped her on the head and said, just take it, your brother-in-law's family has more money than they know what to do with. Guagua happily ran home. I turned around and was startled by a big face. What's up? Landon grinned with his teeth showing. My girlfriend finally admitted she likes me. How could I not be happy? Dexter's been in a really foul mood lately, and no one wants to mess with him. He's been especially harsh on the new crisis management director. It seems like no matter what they do, it's wrong. In just 3 months, almost 10 new people have come and gone. A former colleague once mentioned in passing how great it would be if Fiona were here. Dexter overheard it and immediately fired the person. From that moment on, mentioning Fiona became taboo. No one dared to bring her up again. A group of friends watched Dexter downing drinks, unsure of how to get through to him. Someone suggested bringing Vivian over. The others snickered, like, is it because of how Vivian looks? That woman has called him so many times recently, and he won't even pick up. I don't get it. Why wait for someone to come back when they're not even together right now? It's just Dexter realizing he actually loves his first crush, the girl he grew up with. A bottle smashed on the floor, and the atmosphere in the room dropped to zero. Dexter held back his anger. Over the years, he had truly asked himself if he had treated Fiona well enough. He knew he had done things wrong. He shouldn't have blamed her for Vivian going abroad. But all these years, he provided for her, paying for her food and drinks, except he hadn't given her a proper wedding. He never acknowledged her in front of others. Dexter snapped back to reality. Could it be that this was what had been bothering him all along? That was pretty cold-hearted. A friend suggested, since you like Fiona, just admit you were wrong and bring her back. After all these years, you can't just erase the bond. Dexter toyed with the lighter in his hand and scoffed. I gave her a chance. Whether she comes back or not, it's up to her. Dexter seems calm on the surface, but his recent odd behaviors reveal his bluffing. For instance, he's worried that Fiona's BB business isn't doing well, so he's secretly trying to get her some partners. He stopped his car outside the BB multiple times just to catch a glimpse of Fiona. He still thinks of her as that little sidekick he could never shake off. Besides, the agreement hasn't even run its course yet. Without his permission, who would dare to be her divorce lawyer? Considering they've known each other for over a decade, he might as well admit he was wrong this one time. Dexter thought it all through. His departing figure carried a hint of urgency. The last day of the marriage agreement was coming to an end. I took a rare lazy morning. After getting up, I felt really relaxed. From then on, Fiona was just Fiona. She was no longer anyone's affiliate. The person who occupied 2/3 of my life would no longer have any connection with me after today. Dexter showed up out of nowhere. It caught me so off guard that my smile froze on my face. He was dressed in a white suit, looking just like a groom ready to propose. He was even holding a wedding dress in his arms. Dexter looked at me, got down on one knee, and asked, "Fiona, will you marry me? Starting today, let's really behave like a couple again. I know I've done a lot of things over the years that hurt you, and you've always stuck by my side. I thought I was just used to having you around, but that's not it. It wasn't until you were gone that I realized I had unknowingly fallen in love with you." His expression was a bit cautious. "So, Fiona, could you give me another chance to be by your side, please?" When I didn't respond, he continued, "Are you worried that Vivian might come between us again? I've cut ties with her completely. From now on, I want to proudly tell everyone that you are my wife and the love of my life." "Why?" I said calmly, patting Landon to reassure him. Dexter looked confused and stared at me blankly. I stepped forward and took the wedding dress from his hands. "Dexter, are you pretending, or have you really forgotten that this wedding dress was made to Vivian's measurements at your request?" 3 years ago, no one knew how happy I was when Dexter asked me to marry him, even if he was talking about a marriage of convenience. Once the agreement was over, we would have nothing to do with each other. Even when he told me I had to keep it a secret and couldn't tell anyone, but I was still over the moon. I thought that as long as I stayed by his side, he'd eventually notice me. Maybe one day he would even fall in love with me. That night after we got our marriage license, he tossed me a wedding dress. It was covered in tiny diamonds and pearls, with handmade lace. It wasn't my style at all, but it was still unbelievably beautiful. I was so excited to try it on, only to realize it wasn't my size at all. Compared to me, Vivian is a bit shorter and thinner. I looked at the wedding dress that I couldn't zip up, feeling like a mess in front of the mirror. Dexter's face was getting paler by the second. I took out the divorce agreement I had prepared earlier and handed it to him. "Here, take a look. If everything's okay, just sign it." Dexter's eyes were filled with immense pain as he held his head and asked me, "Fiona, is there really no chance for us anymore?" The corners of his eyes were tinged with red, and the look he gave me made me feel like I was the one he truly loved. But how could that be? He didn't love me when I cooked for him. He didn't love me when I drank to the point of bleeding in my stomach just to keep him company. I'm getting divorced and now he says he loves me? What's that all about? It makes me question whether all those years of love were worth it. Probably not. So I finally spoke up, and with a sharp tone, I said, "Dexter, I regret it. Regretting the time I spent by your side. Regretting falling in love with you. Regretting marrying you." Dexter understood. His face went pale, and immense pain appeared in his eyes. "Yes, this is how it should be. Why am I the only one in pain?" Landon gently wrapped his arms around me from behind, his warm fingers softly holding mine. Dexter's gaze slowly landed on our hands intertwined. "Fiona, I'm sorry. I love you. I've loved you for a long time, but I didn't have the courage to admit it. I'm sorry." He covered his face, tears streaming through his fingers. "It's too late, Dexter. No one will wait for you to look back forever. A broken mirror is just broken. There's no such thing as mending it." The day I went to the civil affairs office to get the divorce certificate, Landon went with me. The night before, he buried his head in my neck like a pitiful little puppy. "No way. I definitely need to keep an eye on you tomorrow to make sure no one has bad intentions." I patted his head and let him be. Dexter looked so thin, his shirt hanging loosely on him. The flesh on his face seemed sunken, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Fiona, I've regretted treating you that way countless times. If I had handled things better back then, would we have ended up like this? I just looked at him coldly and said, Dexter, don't make me lose respect for you. He hung his head, trying to hide his embarrassment, and asked, a bit choked up, will I be able to see you again? I was feeling impatient. If it's possible, I hope this is the last time we ever meet, and I definitely don't want my boyfriend to get jealous. Landon was smiling smugly. Dexter's face looked even more pale and unappealing. He followed me into the Civil Affairs Bureau and didn't say a word. Once we came out, I was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief while holding the divorce certificate in my hand. Dexter looked at the smile on my face, his expression a mix of helplessness and vulnerability. Does leaving me really make you that happy? Landon squeezed over and took my hand. What else? Thanks for sending me your wife, ex-hubby. Dexter's body trembled a little, scared that the guy might lose it, so I tugged on Landon. All right, let's go. Landon calmed down and obediently wrapped his arms around me as we left. Dexter just stood there watching me walk away. His figure seemed lonely and fragile, as if he were the only one left in the world. Later, some mutual friends mentioned that Dexter hasn't been doing well since our divorce. He didn't take it seriously, drank every day, and even ended up with a stomach bleed once from drinking. Every time he got drunk, he would start calling my name. Vivian tried to reach out to him more than once, but he kept shutting her out. I found out from someone slipping up that Vivian had actually taken money from Oliver when she went abroad, and that's why Dexter's attitude changed so much when he found out. Seeing that Dexter was completely out of the picture now, Oliver brought in his outside child. Now there's no place for Dexter in the Hawthorne family anymore. And seeing this, Vivian has turned her attention to the new arrival in the Hawthorne family, the illegitimate son. But that guy is notorious for being ruthless. Right in front of Dexter, he toyed with someone and then tossed them to others. By the time Vivian was found, she had already lost her mind. I chuckled. Those people had nothing to do with me anymore. Landon leaned in, his charming eyes sparkling. Miss Fiona, when are you going to accept my proposal? The sun is shining on me. Isn't this kind of life better? Who can predict what the future holds? I walked ahead confidently, and behind me, I could hear someone's sticky voice.